time series. So we're interested in looking at various patterns of the bee's life cycle, the bee colony's life cycle, swarms where a large proportion of the bees will leave very rapidly. Any evidence of death of a queenlessness, because that's vital to having a healthy queen is vital to the colony's well-being. Evidence that a new queen has just hatched. Is there any evidence in the signals that we monitor of that? Any evidence of things like attacks from predators, whether big predators such as badgers or bears, foxes, or small predators such as hornets? And any evidence of infestation by parasites? Can we find any evidence of these in signals and then use these to predict when things might be going badly for the hive and the hive might be in danger? Looking at more widely at the effects of pollutants and other stresses on bees, one of my colleagues, the environmental scientist, did collect some dead bees from a hive and looked for evidence of chemical pollutants in there, chemical pesticides, sorry, in there. She didn't in our particular hives. That doesn't mean that there are not a problem elsewhere. And using more sophisticated pattern recognition and machine learning methodologies to classify data from our hives and try and predict events such as swarming or the queen dying. So conclusions then. Well, we've identified how honeybees are vital both to the agricultural sector, but to the wider ecosystem, and noting that at least particularly in North America and Europe, their numbers are in serious decline for a variety of factors. But some modern beekeeping practices may actually be contributing to these problems. So we've got evidence that we can monitor successfully various activities of the honeybee's natural life cycle using electronic monitoring, and possibly predicted using pattern recognition techniques on the signals that we acquire, particularly the sound and the hive temperature. We've produced a prototype solution that's relatively low cost for minimally invasive hive monitoring for using smart hives. And we've recently started a collaboration with a university and a non-government organization in Ghana in West Africa, looking at monitoring African honeybees for trying to promote the well-being of local small farmers to enable them to get better yields from their cash crops. They largely subsistence farmers, largely growing food for themselves, but they do have small amounts of cash crops such as cashew nuts and cocoa. Cocoa isn't pollinated by bees, but cashew nuts largely are. So we're looking into ways in which we can help farmers in developing countries by having monitoring bee populations there to try and promote better cash crop yields. So I'd like to thank a couple of, three beekeepers that I know for useful advice. And in Stuart Westmouth's case, he's actually allowed us to deploy some sensors in one of his beehives. Sivakani Sivanis from our biodiversity and landscape team for her support, and the rest of the team as well. And we got some grants from our faculty at Kingston University, and for one of the researchers that was a visiting summer researcher from France, from the EU's Erasmus scheme. Our new work has been is being funded by Innovate UK, a UK government agency, but that project has literally just started. So I'd like to thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the talk. I'm happy to take any questions if there's some time left. I can stop sharing if you want to go back to video.
Yes, sir.
Or I can go back to share if maybe if I get this back.
Sir, we are short of time. Is it okay if I give your email to the participants so that they can ask any questions that they may have?
So they want to email me?
Sir, we are short of time. So if I give your email to the participants, is that okay?
That's okay. I mean, obviously, I've got a lot of other commitments, but I'll do my best to try and respond to them. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Are we completely out of time, or is there the time?
We have 2 or 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, I'm happy to try and answer a couple of questions then.
Okay. Participants, if you have any questions, please write in the chat box.
Sir, there's a question in the chat.
Yes.
Which is that the student named Harsh has asked a question. What is the best method for collecting and preparing pollen from insects stored in 70% ethanol for visual identification?
Ah, well, that's a good question. I'm not a biologist, but one of my colleagues is interested in that. And there have been various solutions proposed, like bees are quite hygienic, or many bees anyway are quite hygienic, and they do maintain their hive. So they actually throw out, they eject detritus, rubbish from their hives. So that would include dead bees, bee excrement and so on as well, but it will also contain substantial amounts of pollen. So it is possible to collect some of that detritus from the hive entrance or exit and look at the pollen in that. There are also ways, obviously, of going inside the hive and trying to harvest pollen from cells or from individual bees, or collecting pollen from bees as they enter or leave the hive by making them go through sort of like a narrow a tunnel that's big enough for the bees to get through, but only just big enough for the bees to get through. So you could scrape through some of the pollen off using that sort of tunnel approach. But obviously that the actually going into the hive itself or the tunnel is more is likely to be a bit more stressful for the bees, but it might be more reliable way of collecting the pollen the bees have been collecting in the last few days rather than over a longer time period. I don't know if that answers the question, but as I say, I'm not really expert on the more biological
Yes,
aspect.
sir. To an extent, I think you have answered at least. Okay, we'll wait for any more questions rising.
But that is something that is of interest to people to see how diverse the range of plants they're pollinating.
Okay, I guess, sir, we'll just share your email ID with all the participants.
Okay, thank you. And as I say, I've got a lot of other commitments, but I will do my best to respond to questions.
Yes, sure. Okay, we'll
I hope you enjoyed the talk and found it informative.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. It was extremely informative. And in case anyone requires any more information or needs to work on it, they'll surely contact you, sir.
Okay, and I'm happy to share the slides.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Goodbye, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. How do I get the main screen back up?